I'll do the AI thing too, the transcript, if I can figure out how to do it. Meeting host, co-host. I can't change this. I can't change who's going to receive it. So it's only going to be me that gets the meeting summary. So I'll send it after. Did you get a notification that this is now doing the meeting summary?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great. Okay, so what problem are we trying to solve? For actually a couple of years, I've been really wanting to define a vision of what GitLab expects the guest user to be able to do, like what workflows do we expect them to be able to perform. We never really got that, so I want to at least define it for planning flows. Can we create like a statement that says the guest user should be able to? And then we can use that as a guiding kind of vision for as we add features, does this fall within the thing that we think they should do, or should it be restricted? In the meeting agenda, I added kind of what I want to get out of this meeting. So it's define that vision, then just make sure we are all in agreement on the restrictions, the things we will not let them do, and then just make a plan for next steps. Gabe, would you like to start?
Sure. I just added one thing. I'm pretty open about that, like how this evolves. I guess the bottom line from how I look at it is, must we always treat ultimate guest roles where the user is a free user, meaning they're not a licensee, versus guest roles in one or more namespaces where the user is also a licensee elsewhere. And the main
Can
reason
you say
is
that
is
again in a different
so
way?
in Ultimate you can have free guest
Right,
users that don't consume a seat.
right.
You can also have a paid seat in Ultimate that has a guest role on a certain namespace,
Oh, right. But their
right?
max role is not guest. Like their max role
Correct.
somewhere on that
Correct.
namespace is higher than
Yes.
guest. Okay, I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Um, and so like, do we always have to treat those the same? I guess is one question. I think it would be confusing from a documentation standpoint and potentially implementation. But the reason being is that we now that we have EAP, the challenge is not providing free users with more abilities that would potentially cannibalize EAP purchases, right? So the more we let guests do, the more likelihood is there is a potential where they would not be able to not be like incentivized to upgrade and buy an EAP seat for that particular user. Does that make sense?
But how is that any different between the two classifications?
Because if they're already a paid user, then I have like a different perspective on what I would allow them to do potentially. If that
I
makes
see.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, like,
But
I think if you're a paid user somewhere and then you want to link stuff together, that's cool. If you're not a paid user and you're going in like mutating these objects, it like is more concerning to me, I guess. Maybe we do treat them the same ways, and this is a moot point. But I guess just thinking through it through the lens of uh historically over my 5 years, I've fielded questions every few months asking for guest users to be able to do more.
yeah,
Right.
I think
Like,
personally, I think like with the idea of trying to simplify, I would hate to introduce different functionality for these two arbitrary
okay.
definitions. We've already called it a guest on Ultimate, so I feel like a guest is a guest, no matter if you're paying for it or not. Personally,
Yeah. Yep.
does anybody disagree?
I mean, the more simple the model is, the easier it will be for users to understand the restrictions. I mean, I think from a UX standpoint, like that's the main thing is like, can I, as a whatever, group administrator, understand how to give somebody access that allows them to do what I need to do? Like, and the more ifs are in those statements, like the harder it gets to do that. But
Yeah.
obviously, we need to balance that against like the easiest model is to let everyone do everything all the time. We're not gonna do that. So, um,
I'd
Yeah.
say if I were, I don't know when guest roles were introduced to free. I'm guessing it's a way to offset the cost of the ultimate license for each person. And I bet it started as like a read only, right? You can just read stuff, and then I bet somebody's like, "Hey, guess we need to let guests comment on things so they can collaborate," right? And then we allowed them to comment on stuff, and then it was like, "Oh, we should allow guests to create issues," right? And then we allowed them to do that, and then it came the problem of, okay, so they can create issues, but they can't update the metadata on the issues like labels. So whenever they create issues with quick actions, the quick actions don't get applied because they don't have the permissions to add metadata. So then it was like, okay, let's update the guest role to allow setting metadata upon issue creation, right? And so now we're incrementally giving like more capabilities to that role, which is I think why it's gotten sort of confusing because we didn't have a workaround for that. We didn't have EAP, and now that we do, it's almost like my vision is they should go back to being read only. Um,
Well, and we can walk
but
out of here saying that that's what the vision is, but I mean, I think we just have to walk through that and see if that would,
we
I,
can't go backwards now
well,
though.
of course, I mean, it's going to be tough, but let's decide what we think it should be moving forward. I do want to point out that I agree with you. I don't want to poach EAP, but there is a difference in permissions between guest and planner. Planner does have more permissions than guest. So I think as long as we can keep, that space there
Mhm.
and make sure we don't start filling that in, the better. Um, we specifically expanded to allow you to make relationships because we thought that if guests are able to create issues, um, we assume that you wanted them to be able to participate in those workflows, and creating relationships puts them there. One thing that we probably should keep in mind is like our favorite financial customer uses guests deeply, and what is it that how are they using them might be a good baseline.
They're using them to get visibility into higher level planning objectives without giving them elevated permissions to things they shouldn't be able to do. And that's sort of the challenge is like you have to be have a role in a higher level group to be able to like see everything. Well, actually, I think you don't. I think you can still see parent epics
You can see direct
potentially.
parent. I just learned that yesterday.
Yeah. But organizations typically want to practice whatever the least privilege
Least
access.
privilege.
And so they want to give people only higher level permissions at the exact places where they need them and no more.
But
Um,
this particular customer is it was the impetus for one of our changes, who got us going
ri-
down this road of giving more permissions.
right, because the as soon as you're a reporter, you can muck with labels and you can do certain things and create certain things that they don't want those users to be able to do, right? Like milestones or iterations or things that have a downstream impact, I would say.
But
That's
like
the
the expansion into relationships specifically, they had us add for guests.
right. And do you know if they wanted guests on both sides of the relationship, or I know that's how we built it, but it was like, does person have a higher role in the one of the sides of the share, you know?
No, we collaboratively agreed on having at least guests on one side. You don't have to have on both. So if you're a guest in the project, you can parent it with an epic from a group that you're not a guest in.
Okay.
Okay, why don't we go down this like thought process? So we have an enterprise example. What is a premium, or what's a mid-market example of how they want to use guests?
I would say it's the same. I mean, there's no guests in premium. So,
Well, there's a guest role. It's just
oh, there is a
reference.
guest role, yeah.
Like, how would you use the guest role as a mid-market company? I think you're actually inviting customers in mid-market, aren't you?
Yeah, or
Like, yeah,
contractors.
yeah, inviting customers.
Some cases it's just basically as a way to support like authentication. Like the use case of I associate GitLab with Active Directory and import every single user to the top level group as a guest so that they're there, but they can't do anything. And then, so they'll be inevitably a member of some projects and as a guest as a result, but may not be active users in those cases.
So you want to put them in where and assign them to something that can't do damage, and they may or may not even use it.
Yeah, I mean that's like indirectly related to plan, right? Like that's often tied to actually managing code and things like that. But that is also like a realistic scenario that you'll have guest access into a lot of different projects just by virtue of the organizational setup.
Yeah. Let's go down, let's pull the thread of I'm inviting customers into my project as a guest. What is their main purpose? I'm assuming it's visibility and maybe commenting, right? Are customers typically creating issues? I don't think
Um,
so.
yes, they are.
They are?
And in both use cases, what the thing typically is let's say you have a core team that's using GitLab to build something or to do whatever. And then you are also like in an IT type department or scenario where you have a bunch of people in the company that you're supporting with this work you're doing in GitLab. A lot of them will have give people, everyone in their company, a guest role, at least in Ultimate, because they're free, a guest role so that they can come in and file tickets or do whatever. So I know that it's a frequent thing because that's where there's a big brouhaha about Ultimate customers who are frustrated around guest users creating issues when the metadata didn't get applied because they needed to create issues. So it's almost
And
like opening tickets, so to speak.
so it's like opening tickets. That's what I was just going to ask. So it's like a ticket. It's like reporting a problem. So they're not doing relationships in that case as a customer. Like I'm
No.
telling you there's this problem. They don't care what it ladders up to. Okay. What about contractors? I think this is more complete workflow needs, right?
Question related to that, like, what's the reason they don't leverage like service desk for those cases?
They incomplete tool, workflow
There's
lacking.
no way to create a service desk issue in the UI, or at least there wasn't. I don't think there is
You
today.
email it to create it.
The only way to do it is you create via email.
But I think that's the ideal state, Nick. I think you hit the nail. It's a
Right.
workaround right now.
Yeah. What customers really want for those use cases is a form that they can embed wherever they want, in whatever external site, or some like link to some GitLab form only view where they can submit a ticket that way via the form. Um, and it's more goes into the Jira service management use cases, I'd say. But we have I've talked to lots of PubSec customers who that's the exact thing that they do, and it's more of the IT operations side of the house and less like the agile planning side of the house.
As it relates to metadata, they would expect, like you were saying, that there's a problem right now where they're not able to add metadata. But is there an expectation that customers would need to enter metadata upon creation of an issue?
It goes back to the problem of if they have permission to create a an issue, and then they like use a template, which is the common use case. That template has quick actions on it to apply certain metadata on it. Um, it would not apply the metadata, so we updated it to allow applying the metadata. And I know there's open requests now being like, why can't a guest user update labels or drag and drop a
Mm-hmm.
card on a board or whatever? And the general position we've taken is we don't allow them to mutate the core data of an issue. And I don't think that unless you change the semantic, they're not allowed to edit the description once it's created.
I don't think we didn't touch description.
Yeah. So the idea is like once it's created, then it's sort of read only except for collaborating and comments.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
So what about a contractor? Like, why would you give a contractor guest over an actual role?
Because you can let them create tickets or view tickets or that sort of thing, but then they can also, I believe, uh fork the repo. Is that true? Let me look at
With
the.
what end goal? To have
So the
a
contractor
repo?
can work on a fork of a repo, and then it would which it could be somewhere else in GitLab or outside of GitLab or just locally, and then they can commit to that and then push their changes or have their changes pulled upstream by somebody who has elevated permissions in the project. Um,
So, and and in this case, they don't need collaboration, or they need collaboration. I would assume they would.
they probably would need it, yeah.
And on the fork, do we expect that they would have more than guests? Yeah, right? Because they can't get the work done.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
They'd be the owner of the fork if they created it.
yeah. So on main
Okay,
project, guest on fork.
they it looks like they can't do that.
They can't fork as a guest.
No, view. They can view right now. They can view CI/CD artifacts, download artifacts, view environments, a bunch of stuff in CI/CD, view pipelines in MR tab. But when you get to okay, oh, that's LFS stuff. Compliance.
All right, let's keep going just because I want to keep us on time. Um, so do we expect then that the contractor as a guest is meant to do any workflows?
I wouldn't think it a workflows, no. I mean, they can't even create like a merge request in that project, so I don't know why they'd be able to like update the work item beyond commenting.
Common, yeah. I would love to know what
Interesting.
that use
What is it?
case is. Uh, I want to get to like talking about what differences we want between EAP and guests, but before we get there, Nick, do you want to verbalize Brant?
Yeah, that's kind of more tactical in what is currently shown in the docs, but it shows quite significant differences between what's currently available for a guest user on work items like tasks and OKRs versus issues. Like it shows on tasks that a guest user can do things like edit metadata and a bunch of other various things that are not allowed on issues. I'm kind of wondering if this is actually true though, because I feel like when issues were implemented as work items, we took into account making guest restricted, but I'm
It's
just
I think that might be a product of the changes in the last 12 months, like with these reports, like the large financial customer kicking off changes that we made in product planning, the metadata thing that Gabe's talking about. I'm guessing that's what drives that.
well, that point of like editing metadata is qualified by the notes. I don't, it probably shouldn't have a check to be honest, because they can't edit um metadata other than the title and description and only of things that they're authored or assigned to. Although some of that we've only recently fixed to actually work that way.
Yeah, the one that looks confusing to me is it says we allow with tasks convert to another type of item. Guest can
Mhm.
convert it to another type of item, which is a big data mutation that we shouldn't do.
Guess
That was
conversion.
recently restricted, so
Okay.
docs should be updated.
All right, we've talked through a few reasons why we think people are using guest. Um, if we wanted to create more space between those columns of what you can and can't do between EAP and guest, what would be the things that you think are the big differentiators? Can they use boards? Can they interact with boards today, for example?
I think they can view boards. Uh, oddly, that's like not a thing that's in our permissions. But I'm guessing if they can view issues, they can then view boards.
Maybe
Like,
maybe
or
rather than feature based, we should talk workflow based.
yeah.
So
I
like
don't think they should be able to
guest,
update anything in the
yes,
work. They shouldn't be able to update the workflow of anything.
guest, no. Okay, so no was explain that a little bit more. No workflow
So they should be able to
based.
collaborate with the teams that are doing the work, but they shouldn't be able to control the workflow, which is the metadata, right? Like they shouldn't be able to drag and drop stuff on boards or really like do anything other than view stuff and view reports, but they're not actually the ones doing the work.
Okay, what about because this becomes fuzzy because we open the door to creation. How do we limit creation? We already let them create. So we're going to let them create and not like not what? Create and pass it to the team for the
Yeah.
workflow is what you're saying?
Yep.
Create and pass to.
It'd be sort of like here if uh I was the PM and I basically anytime I wanted to create an issue, I had to go bug my EM and be like, hey, create this issue, even though you're like, I'm not going to be the one doing the work, you are. But having to go and like tell the person to create issues all the time, I think is like the why we allowed that.
Can they currently assign milestone or iteration?
Nope.
Okay.
During creation, though,
Yes.
yeah, you can't
They
change it
can
though.
during.
Hmm.
It's essentially like a backdoor to a form, like where
Yeah.
you're like
Yeah.
filling it out, but then you're not able to change it. Like, I mean, I don't think that was probably the best solution when at the time, but we're yeah, that's what it is now. So it's a
This is
little
a
bit.
really bad question. Could you by role change the creation modal?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the sense that like each widget has its own check, and that's checking for permissions and like what you're able to update. So you could do it at the widget level. Okay, I think we already do.
Would you like to explore that opportunity?
That would be like a more holistic change to the guest rule, right? If we wanted to say like that they can't add details because they can do it today, and I assume we would be.
It would be a deprecation that we would have to announce for 19.
Yeah, I mean, the way to handle that without breaking quick actions would be to pre-fill all the widgets with data based on the quick actions and don't show the quick actions to guest role and then lock all the widgets. So they can like fill out the description, but they can't set widget values, but that would also, yeah, be a breaking change. Um,
Regardless of the technology to get there, do you want to introduce that?
I don't think it's high priority right now.
It wouldn't be right now. It would be a 19 thing because it would be a breaking change and we would work our way to get there. I wanted to find the vision regardless of when we actually execute on the changes.
Well, the vision is that we build forms and we let
The
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 customers
vision
use
for the
forms.
guest.
Yeah, no, a guest can submit a form. Um, no, I'm just kidding. I think the vision is pretty good at where it is. We just need to make sure it's consistent and not expand it anymore, is
So
what
it's
I think.
okay on creation that they are able to touch metadata
Yeah, it's
or
the
set it.
only,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else in the to create bigger space between EAP and guest? So no workflow updates. What about views? So we're allowing them to view. We're going to be introducing like save views, for example.
Hmm.
How about like not giving them save views?
Or like personal, because you're gonna have like a personal versus like
Group.
namespace scope, right? Like
Yeah.
I could definitely see being no group scope, and then I would say like maybe personal scope, but it's up to you guys. But if
I
you
think it's
think of like
fine.
a contractor, like it would be nice. Like it makes sense to me as a contractor that I can't come in and create something that everyone can use as this like least permissioned user. But it would also be nice if I could create my list of like stuff that I care about because I'm still like working on stuff or have there's some reason I'm here. Um,
So what you're saying they would still be able to view any group scope, say view that someone else created though. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, just like they can use
But
boards today, right? Like
they can't mutate it or add any new ones. It's basically preventing them from doing anything destructive that would impact everyone else. I guess that's like the constraint to think about is like, will the action allow them to change things that other people rely on for their day-to-day work? If it is, then no.
yeah, that's why I was
Um,
saying like personal scope is like who cares? Like there's no team impact to that.
would we allow, I almost think it's the opposite. I almost think, or maybe I didn't understand. I almost think you allow them to see the group view, but you don't allow them the personal view and you don't allow them to configure the view, like do any filtering even. Because it's kind of collaboration to see the view that the team's looking at,
Yeah, you can see those views, but you
see
can't edit
them.
them. You can't edit the scopes. You should be able to do incremental filtering like you can with the filter bar, but you shouldn't be able to apply like permanent changes
Why should you be able to filter? That's interacting with the data that I don't think they should.
because but you're not mutating the data. You're not like the difference is mutation versus view.
Yeah, but now I'm thinking the EAP versus paid seat versus not paid seat. Like if you want to interact with the data, I want you to pay for it.
Well, guest users can view like an issue list today and interact with the filters, right?
Guest
Yeah.
users can view an
Yeah,
issue
even
list,
public
yes.
non like you don't even have to be authenticated to use filters. Like you can
Okay.
on a public project.
Okay. I'm just looking for more space for EAP. View group.
Like I think in general, what we would want to avoid is making it harder for anyone to find things. Because if they have access to this, they should be able to like find the things they care about and like really hone in the limitations around basically like shared things. Meaning, yeah, like the shared views, you can use it to find things. You shouldn't be able to change it. You shouldn't be able to create new ones. You shouldn't be able to like modify labels, milestones, anything like that.
Can I limit advanced views? Like when we introduce grid or nesting, it's kind of like the idea of, summary rollups are ultimate, not premium. Can I give the premium view stuff to paid seats and not free seats?
The weirdness would be like again, like if you're a contractor and the PM first has to know that like you have this limitation. So when they're like, "Oh, here, go look at the, here's our grid that we use
And they don't have access.
to track everything," and then it's like, "Wait, why can't you see this?" And like, why is it different? That's where it's gonna
Okay.
get kind of weird.
All right. Any other ideas for what they can and can't do?
I've had this in the past with like ADO, where I was a contractor and I was in
Mhm.
like an ADO instance, and I could go in and they used like save queries for everything. It's like I could go in and use all the save queries that they created, but I don't think I could like write my own query.
How about like GLQL? I don't think you can permission that. Just available, right?
It's
I,
kind of like Tableau works with the roles that we have. Like we can't create net new dashboards or views that actually change the queries, but we can create like permutations of existing dashboards that we kind
Like
of
clone and edit.
yeah, well you can't even you almost like can personalize it, right? Where you say I'm going to apply a certain set of filters and criteria to this and kind of do some things based on like what's available. And then I'm going to save that view as something that I go back and look at. But I can't actually write the underlying queries or the data model or any of those things, right? And so it can still interact with it and do what I need to do, but and I'm not breaking anything for anyone else or changing something that somebody else relies on. I think that's the intent behind it, I would say.
Okay. Okay, so we have 5 minutes. Can we collectively write as a guest user, I should be able to statement? Collaborate with my team.
Yep.
Create items.
Yep.
Um, have visibility into work.
Yep. And I would say organize work how I want in my personal view of work, I guess, or something.
Just want to be careful not that it's or organizing in this case is only really like how you're finding it. You're not, you can't like at a personal level change the labels or something.
Right, right, right.
How about find? How about the word find?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find work. Should we do so that? That might help. Feel free to just go in and swarm on anyone you feel good about.
Well, I think
Um,
are all of these together probably are like a single, so like great.
Yeah, I'm just
It's
hoping that we could create then from these sub items one statement.
it's all basically so that I can contribute uh to the work without being able to change everything. There's sort of a two-parter there, since one of those is my personal goal, the other part is the team administration goal.
So the personal goal is,
Or should this be framed from the perspective of the like group manager? I want to invite my teammate as a guest user so that they can.
that's a great point. Rather than the point of view of the guest itself, it's the person inviting the guest. Invite a guest user to my project, the higher concept of project, so that they can contribute to the team's work without negatively impacting the project. Yeah.
Yeah, so that they can see and contribute to the work. Negatively impacting the project
Yeah.
implies something, but I don't know, without unintended access, or I don't know, however you want to say that.
Yeah. Without, we need to figure out how to say that. Okay. But I think that that's the right vision statement from the perspective of who's that person? Who's that persona? Project lead?
Sure. Whoever's, yeah, it probably doesn't map straight to like a persona, but it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
whoever is doing the job of like managing team composition.
I want to invite a guest user to my project so that they can see and contribute to the project. Yeah, that's the key, the without the damage part. But I think that that clearly defines now. Okay, so let's say um, we are adding what would be like a good future thing. We're adding the ability to um, create custom work item types. That's a very clear one, right? Can that person contribute without that? Yes, they can contribute. They can collaborate. They can create items without it. I mean, that's a little iffy without the custom. They will have visibility without the ability to do that. They'll be able to find their work without the ability to do that. Okay, I think this is a really great, way better than what we had, which was nothing. So maybe if somebody can think of something better than damage. I don't think I ever opened an issue. I meant to open issue, so I'll open an issue. I'll dump all this in. I'll ping you on it, and that could just be our SSOT for when questions come up to say this is our vision. In terms of next steps, I don't think there's anything immediate to do at the moment. But as things unfold, now that we have this, we can decide like are changes needed, anything like that. We have two action items. Need to update the task permission list. Who's doing that?
I can take a pass at it and I'll just ping Marchin to
Thank you.
double check.
And Nick Brandt, can you just decide what you want to do with personal save views for guests?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank
We
you
have
all.
we have one like weird thing.
Yeah.
I just want to throw out there. We don't have to solve it right now, but and
Mhm.
that is that guest users today cannot create incidents. So by virtue of that, we already have a limitation on type creation, um, which is something that we'll have to figure out if we like. We could always just say that that's limited to incidents, and we can kind of make incidents like a default type that has limitations on what can be changed, but that basically introduces a pattern that we don't otherwise have. Like we like guests can't create epics, or can they?
Yeah, they
Um,
can.
they can't.
I
Okay, so that's just
since
incidents.
since incidents aren't being worked on right now, and I don't even know where they live technically.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll find out who's the like maintainer of that, and we can probably just drop that down to guest, which is to simplify things, which is probably what I would do, unless we believe strongly that there's a reason to have type specific checks for type, based on role,
Okay.
whatever.
That's but however that pans out is fine. We just need to account for the fact that like we already have this one sort of divergence from that, so we need to
Yeah.
account
I'm
for
gonna
it
look
anyway.
into epics. I said yes, but now I want to double check. Gabe, what are you gonna look into so I can write it down?
Oh, whether or not we can drop incidents down to guest incident creation.
Epics can't be
Okay.
created, I guess.
No?
That's what it
No,
shows in the docs at least.
Well, but
I
did we
think
test?
think they can. I think we agreed that we were going to let them
do we need to
to.
update the docs probably?
You want to verify that,
I'll
Amanda?
verify it. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
verify it.
I think we had that discussion when we were working on work items that we wanted to not do type specific
Yeah, I think
checks.
so. Are we still in agreement with that? Like they can create any work item type?
Yeah, because I think
Okay.
it's gonna get increasingly more confusing as like everything works the same, but then for this one person, they suddenly they can't see the same things in this drop down. Like that feels really hard to understand as a user, like why I wouldn't be able to do that. Um,
Okay. All right, cool, great. All right, thank you. Thank you all. I'll put this recording in the meeting agenda for reference. Have a good one, everybody.
About
Yeah.
Bye.